And we're going to talk all about how to post a story to your website, which is probably one of the, if not the foundational thing that you're going to be doing the most on your site. And so in order to post a story, I'm first going to navigate to my site's dashboard once I'm logged in. And I can do that either by clicking on this little house icon here or clicking on the SNO dashboard tab up in this top ribbon. Now, I mentioned earlier our instructions and tutorials and the option to submit a support ticket to us if you'd like a copy of this webinar recording. So I want to just briefly point those areas out here. I can get to both of those by hovering over SNO support, and I can either go out to those instructions and tutorials or submit a support ticket that way. I also mentioned that we are offering these webinars twice daily for the next several weeks, and you can register for any upcoming webinars here in this kind of middle section of your dashboard. So back to our webinar topic today, which is posting a story to your site. You can either hover over the SNO dashboard tab here in the upper left-hand corner and add a story that way, or you can use the stories tab here on the left and add a story that way. Regardless of which option you choose, it's going to bring you to the same spot where you are going to go ahead and fill in all of your information for your story. And so I'm going to start up at the top with a headline here. And then directly below that, I've got a spot for a secondary headline or a deck or a subhead. So I will go ahead and fill that in here. And then lastly, kind of up in this top portion, I have a spot for my writer's name or my byline. And this is a field that is going to link out to this person's staff profile, which we aren't going to talk about staff profiles in this webinar, but just know that those staff profiles are like a running portfolio of that person's contributions on the site. So really important that you are including that writer's name there. And if you have multiple writers that have worked on a story together, you do have the option to add another writer here. If you are curious about those staff profiles and want to learn a little bit more about those, we will have upcoming webinars all about staff profiles, so you can be sure to check one of those out. Then from there, I come to this story body field, and this is where I can either type directly to draft my story here on the site. So if I wanted to do that, obviously I would just type here. You can also copy and paste from something like a Google Doc or a Word document, whichever you prefer. And I find that most people that I talk to actually do prefer copying and pasting from something like a Google Doc. So I've got some sample text here in my Google Doc that I will just copy and paste over to my story here. Now, there are some buttons up here at the top of my story body field to add different elements into my story, and I'll come back and talk about those a little bit later on. There are also just kind of some basic text editing functions up here at the top of my story body field. If I wanted to include headings or a bulleted list, obviously very important for journalistic writing, the option to insert a hyperlink there. So just kind of, again, some of those basic text editing functions up here at the top. Once I have inputted my story body, I'm going to jump over to the right-hand side of my screen here and start working my way through these fields. My first option over here on the right is to choose a template for my story, which is going to determine kind of the structure and the design of the story page when somebody clicks in to read it or view it on the site. Now, these are brand new this year. We have 5 different templates or 4 templates. Some of you may not see the dual sidebars option. That is a template that is specific to a particular width of your site. It does have to be 1200 pixels wide. So again, you might only see 4, but there are 5 total templates to select from here. I can easily toggle between to choose the template that I want. And if you're curious about these templates, know that we will have lots of webinars about them coming up, the different types of templates, what you can use them for, how you can edit them. They are all completely customizable now. So I'm just going to choose the full width template for today. But again, if you are interested in learning more about those templates, know that we will have lots of webinars about those in the coming weeks. Once I've selected my template, I can upload my featured image, and that is going to be, if I open up my site here, kind of that main image that is associated with the story. So when we're looking at my homepage, all of these photos and images that you're seeing here are featured images. So very important, if and when you can, to set that featured image or to upload a featured image with your story. And when I do that, I can either upload a new image, which is what you'll probably do most of the time, or you can select an image from your media library. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and upload a new image here. And anytime I upload a new image, I'm going to be prompted to caption it and credit it over here on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a caption and a photographer credit. Now, that photographer credit field is another one that will pull this story into a staff profile. So again, very important that you are crediting those photographers with the photos so that this story will get linked to their staff profile of all of their contributions on the site. Once I'm done with that, I can set that featured image. I get a nice preview of it here, and I can adjust the location if I want to. Video and audio work a little bit differently than images. If I want to upload video, or let's say something like a podcast, I do first have to upload that file to a third-party hosting site, whether it is YouTube or Vimeo or Spotify. And to feature it in a story, I'm going to do that via the embed code. So I've got a YouTube video that I will just do. Again, we are going to talk all about multimedia in a future webinar session. So if you're interested in learning more about video and podcast, definitely be on the lookout for that webinar session. But for today, I'm just going to use this YouTube video. So I'm going to grab the embed code that YouTube provides for it here. Copy that embed code, nothing I need to do with it. And I'm going to just add it in here. Similar to that featured image, I can change the location here if I want to. And then I can also add in a credit line here, which again, very similar to the photography credit and the writer's name, that will link this into that person's staff profile. Not quite ready to publish this story yet, so we're going to skip over the publishing box. A new option that you will see here that is related to those story templates is the option to customize the story design. So you start with that initial template, and I mentioned earlier, those are all customizable now. But if I wanted to customize something just on this particular story, so I'm using the full width template, but let's say if I click on customize story design, I want a larger headline font size just for this story. Or maybe I need to bump up my featured image photo area height, make it a little bit taller just for this story. Or maybe I want to adjust the size of the drop cap on the story. So there are a lot of different options in here that you can customize. And again, this would be if you want to customize something just with this particular story. This is not customizing the entire template. I'm going to leave this one as is, but note that you do have that option there. My last two steps here, I can choose the category for my story. Very important step when you are publishing stories to the site. It is going to do two things for you. First of all, it will determine where that story displays on your homepage here. You can see I've got these different little blocks of content displaying my different categories. So if I wanted this story to be a features story in this features area, I would want to make sure that I select that category there. The other thing it will tell your site is where to kind of store that story for you. So for instance, I've got two different features stories on my homepage here. But if I click on that features tab in my menu, I'm going to see all of the features stories that I have ever published to my site. Maybe eventually if it loads, there we go. So selecting that category is going to determine where your story displays in these tabs as well. The very last step here is kind of more of an optional one, and that is tagging your stories. I think this is a great step to kind of link similar content together. You can think of it as really similar to hashtags. So, for instance, maybe we are doing a series of stories on our homecoming week this fall, and we want to create a homecoming week 2023 tag to kind of link all of those stories together. You can use it for that. You could tag, maybe I want to tag football in here because it is a football story, or clubs or organizations, those kinds of things. So, really, you can use as many tags as you would like to, or you can just forego that step. That is up to you and your staff. The last thing I'm going to kind of circle back and demonstrate are these buttons up here at the top, and how you can use these to add additional elements into your stories, whether that be an inline photo, additional photos beyond that featured image, or what we call our SNO story elements. The first thing that I want to do, regardless of the element that I am adding to my story, is create a line break or some designated space in the text for the element that I am inserting. I never want to insert an element at the end of a line of text here. That will really throw off the formatting. You'll see some weird alignment things, smaller text, that sort of issue. So again, I do want to create a line break or some blank space here, and add an inline photo first. Very similar to when we added the featured image, I can either select from my media library here, or I can upload a new image. And then again, just like we saw with that featured image, anytime I add an image to the site, I will be prompted to caption it and then credit the photographer as well. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to insert it into my post there. And I can see this image is probably one that is really pixelated on my site or on my computer. So I would want to do a more high quality image than that, but you can resize the image just using these arrows in the corner here, as well as choose a different alignment option for it. The other button up at the top here is the option to add a SNO story element. Starts the same. I'm going to create a designated space in my text here, and then add SNO story elements. And I've got all of my different elements that I can choose from here on the left. Now, I do have what's called the site booster on this particular demo site. So there is a chance that you won't see all of these elements on your site. So I will just demonstrate one that everybody has. It is a pull quote here. The nice thing about these elements is when you select the one that you want, it will tell you exactly what you need in terms of content and design for that particular element. So for a pull quote, I need to identify the speaker and the quote. And then I've got kind of a plethora of design options here. I can stylize that quotation mark, adjust the font size, choose the alignment or the border size, color, background color, etc. I'm going to do maybe a kind of thicker, we'll do a black border around it. So you can get in here, your students can get in here and kind of design these elements how they'd like, and then insert them into the story once they're finished. Now, with those SNO story elements, what you will see for most of them is the short code for the element. And basically, that is just what the site is going to read in order to display that element. So nothing you need to worry about there, nothing you did wrong or anything like that. That is exactly how those elements will be formatted in the text here. So now that we have all of the building blocks put together for this story, I'm going to come back to this publishing box here, and I've got some different options. I can either save this as a draft if I need to come back and do some more work to it later. I can preview what it will look like prior to publishing. I really like that option, especially if you were adding some of these SNO story elements in there and you want to see what they look like before you publish to your site. You do have that option to preview. And then if you are an author, or if a student is an author, editor, or administrator user role, they will have the option to publish live to the site. If somebody has a contributor user role, they will see a button here that says submit for review, and that is kind of their mechanism or their way of submitting this story and saying that it's ready to publish. Some other things in here, you can time when your stories are published or schedule them. So if I hit publish, it's going to publish this live to my site immediately. But if I wanted to, let's say, publish the story on Friday instead, I can come in here and edit when I want the story to publish. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just publish this story live to my site. And as soon as I publish it, I have this new tab up here at the top that will enable me to go out and view it. So let's go take a look. Here I can see that I'm using the full width template, so it is kind of stretching across, or there's no sidebars or anything like that. And again, if you want some more information about these new templates and kind of everything that's available with them, check out a future webinar. We'll go through them in more detail. But as I scroll down the page here, you can see all of that information that I input here for my story, including my featured image, that video that I embedded, all of my text here. There is my pull quote with the formatting that I selected, my very pixelated inline photo there, and then those tags there at the end. And just to show you how those tags work, if I click on one, it will bring me out to any other stories that have that same tag. So that is everything from start to finish on how to publish a story to your site. I'm going to come back in here to edit the story. So all of the different building blocks, different fields that you are going to see or your students are going to see as you publish stories to your website. To access a list of your stories, if I just click on this stories tab here, I can see now there is my webinar story. And this is where you can see all of those stories that have been published to your site. So that is everything that I have planned to present to you all during this webinar. If you have questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat and I will answer those as we kind of conclude today's webinar session. Otherwise, if you are all set and ready to go, you can feel free to sign off at any point. And thank you all so much again for joining me this afternoon. Yeah, so the homepage of your site is going to naturally pull in the newest stories in whatever categories you have selected here. So for instance, I can actually see this features. These are called widgets. So these widgets are going to pull in the newest stories in those categories. So as I publish that webinar story in features, whatever story I had there previously kind of naturally got pushed off of the page. So we would not recommend going in and kind of deleting anything like that. Just kind of let your page naturally, or your homepage, it will naturally kind of refresh and pull in your newest content as you continue publishing on the site. There's not really a way, unless you were to go in and change the categories of these widgets, there's not necessarily a way to push those old stories off the homepage without first publishing newer stories in those categories. Yeah, so we will definitely be talking about widgets and donations and monetization in future webinar sessions. So I'm not going to get into that today, but there will be a webinar session on that, I believe, next week, which we have not sent out the webinar schedule next week for next week yet. I believe that'll be going out probably tomorrow or Thursday. So definitely keep an eye on your dashboard for that one. There's going to be a couple different webinars, I would say, that'll cover donations and monetization, as well as a couple webinars that'll talk about widgets. Great. Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad you think so.